Hey guys, what's up? I'm doing a review of a hand that Aris here posted on the forums. It's a hand where he calls an open in the small blind or in the big blind with the ace five offsuit versus semi-regular. He check raises a king 7-9 flush draw flop, barrels the turn, and the river is a brick. And villain he checks, villain overbets, and he calls. Um, I wanted to go over. We're going to just be using Combinator here and going in depth and looking whether or not this is a plus EV call on the river. There are, we're out calling with ace high, but we do have. There are a lot of misdraws, so it could be plus EVs. So um, let's go ahead and do some analysis. So this is going to be a pretty long analysis. It'll probably take about 15 minutes, but I hope you guys enjoy. And I'm not going to be editing it either. So first of all, I think he's a semi-regular, so semi-regulars, heads up, I think open a little bit tighter than most people, so I'm going to give him a range of around 75%. So therefore, that's his opening range. Um, and then on the flop, I'm just going to assume that he's going to see about 100% of his range since I don't have any information to the contrary. So I'm going to say his flop c-betting and then calling a check raising range is going to be, it's a king 7-9 board, so I think he's going to call with any pair of sevens or better. If there's a dynamic, especially where we're check raising a lot, I think he'll call flop pretty light. And then the other hands that he'll call with are any hand with a flush draw. And then group 3 will be any hand, which is going to be any draw with a gut shot or better. So you can see that on the flop, he's folding. He's continuing 43.3% of the time with pairs. Gut shots 15% of the time, flush draws 4.1% of the time. So that's 37.7% of the time he's going to be folding. So let's go ahead and input the turn, which I believe is the deuce of diamonds. Okay, yep, the deuce of diamonds. And so we bet again. We bet 110 into a pot of 150. So given that, I should close this down too. Given that, I think he's going to fold on the turn with a lot of his hands. I think he's going to fold with any hand that's not a gut shot. Or, sorry, that he's going to fold all of his gut shots and only call with open-enders or better. So let's go ahead and, undo that. We just want to clear group 3. So group 3, we're going to reassign now to any hand with an open-ended straight draw. So we'll hit go. Have to reassign that. Okay. So open-ended straight draws are going to call again. And then we're going to also say all of his flush draws are going to call again as well. And as far as what pairs he's going to call again with, he is likely going to call again, I think, with any pair of nines or better on this turn. So let's go ahead and input that. Also, I didn't account for him 3-betting the flop at all with the top of his range. I think that's a possibility, but I think that I'm just going to leave it merged because though sometimes people are going to 3-bet the top of their range, they're also sometimes going to 3-bet their semi-bluffs and their flush draws and stuff, and I don't have any particular information on it, so I just kept it merged. I hope that makes sense. So pairs of nines or better are going to be group 1. Okay, we'll have to clear group 1. And then, okay, a pair of nines or better. There we go. Sometimes this program can be a little bit buggy, but okay. So his range that calls the turn, if he's calling with any pair of nines or better, is going to be Okay, so this range distribution is going to be 32.4% pairs, 4.2% flush draws, and 4% open-ended straight draws for calling the turn. So let's go ahead and take a look at the river. And the river isn't going to change much. The river is the 4 of clubs. So his range distribution does not change at all. So given that, we can see that he doesn't have that many draws on the river. If we look at the report here, hopefully you guys can see, it might be a little bit small, but in the groups, if we look, and we have the grouped range is what we're looking at. The ungrouped hands he would have folded at some point. So the grouped ranges, 80% of it is pairs, 10% is missed flush draws, and 10% is missed straight draws. So there's about 4 pairs for every flush draw on this, or missed draw on this river. However, villain shoves river, and as Aris said, we don't really expect villain to be making that bet sizing with a hand such as just a bare king. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and manually remove all the kings that all of his bare top pair hands he would not be shoving in this way, because it just would not make any sense, and I agree with that assumption. I don't think villains, unless there's some really specific leveling going on in these spots, I just don't think people are going to do that too often. King 4 offsuit is 2 pair now, but so we would shove that. So we have King 6, King 7 is 2 pair, King 8 is not, King 10 is not, King Jack, King Queen, and he would also not shove a hand such as a 9x, because 9x would be, he's just going to check it back because it has showdown values. So we have pocket, we can remove all the 9x and the high pocket pairs. So 9-3, 9-4 is 2 pair now, 9-5 is going to not jam, 9-6 is not going to jam, 9-7 is 2 pair, 9-8 is not going to jam, 9-8, 9-6, okay. 10-9 is not going to jam, Jack 9 is not going to jam, Queen 9 is not going to jam, Ace 9 is not going to jam, King 9 will jam because that's 2 pair, Queen 9 is not going to jam, Jack 9 is not going to jam, 10-9 is not going to jam. So actually what I should have just done here was use the auto select feature and said 2 pair or better, but that's okay. And I think that if he has a hand such as top pair top kicker, I think there's a possibility that he still jams the river. So I wouldn't remove all top pairs. I would say that those hands are probably still in his range. So if we look at his range distribution now, using the chart, we can see that all these ungrouped hands are hands he's folding, but the hands that he's betting are about 9.5% 2 pair type hands and 8% total of missed draws. And so what that means is that if we look at his grouped combinations, we'll see that missed draws make up about 45% of his range on this river. Now, let's take a look at the price we're getting. We're calling 450 into 370. So 450 into 370. Well, actually, we don't need to use the calculator for that. We're getting it's about 1.8 to 1. So we need about 36% equity around there. And if he's jamming all of his missed draws, we're going to have about 45. So it is going to be a plus EV call if that is the assumption. However, another thing to consider is that, one thing that I forgot here is that, some of these missed pairs, these flush draws aren't going to be jamming because they've picked up a pair on the river. All the 4x are not going to jam. So yeah, you guys can see here as we go along, our analysis continues to refine. So any 4, he's not going to jam. Let's see what else here. Any of the ones that probably picked up a deuce would probably also check behind, because they would have showdown value versus our misdraws. So all the deuces are not going to jam. So that affects things a little bit, and if that changes it so that his range distribution now has a few less flush draws. So that's like 18. So that's about 42% of hands on the river that are misdraws now. And also we have to take into account that he's not always going to be jamming with his misdraws here. Sometimes he's going to be giving up. But as far as like knowing his river bluffing frequency with his misdraws, that's going to vary a lot from opponent to opponent. So what I would say in this situation is that a hero call could be good, but it's only going to be good if villain is always bluffing his misdraws and his range is very, very polarized. So if you have a guy who's a little bit more passive, who does not always bluff his misdraws, even if he only bluffs his misdraws about 50% of the time, that's going to change things quite a bit. Yeah. And also there is a possibility that villain can jam some misdraws that actually, no, there aren't any misdraws that beat us because we block all of his ace-high flush draws. So yeah, that's my conclusion that I've come to, is that a hero call can be good, depends on whether or not villain is always bluffing misdraws. So I know there's been a couple of mistakes in this analysis, but hopefully this has been helpful, and that's it. Take it easy, guys.